Well, welcome everyone officially this evening. My name is Shirley and I will be your moderator tonight. I am excited to welcome Dr. Kristine Aadland. She will discuss 3D printing versus milling. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A section. We will be answering questions live at the end of the webinar. Dr. Aadland, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I will pass it over to you now.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm always so excited to do these webinars. I'm honored to be a part of it. So thank you for having me. I am so excited to share some of my favorite technologies in 3D printing versus milling. Oh, except even though I love technology so much, my technology is not working at the moment. Give me 1 second. Oh, I think you might have to give me control again, Shirley.
Okay, no problem. 1 second.
It's been a while since I've done a webinar. I've had the luxury of being live. Let's see. Oh, I now have control. Okay. So this is just a little bit about me. I am a practicing dentist. I graduated from Oregon Health Science University all the way back in 2006. When I graduated dental school, the most digital dentistry we had is that we had digital x-rays, which was kind of a big deal in dental school. I had the opportunity to be an associate before I started my own practice with a dentist who at the time was definitely known as a cowboy. And I now realize the opportunity I had. He was one of those dentists who used this machine called CEREC, and he placed his own implants, and he had these 2 private practices and was just one of the best mentors in what was possible with dentistry. And it just got me so excited to where I am today. In 2009, I decided to take a leap and build my own practice at a time when everyone told me I was absolutely crazy. That was kind of the first time our world was shutting down in my town of Vancouver, Washington. So about 10 minutes north of Portland, Oregon. So I'm in the Pacific Northwest. And in 2009, it was the first time that we had dentists actually going bankrupt. It was scary. There were insurances that were cutting down their fees, and everyone was scared because of the recession. And me, being in my young 20s, naive to the world, was just excited to build this practice. And I wanted to do it with the latest technology because myself, as a really scared patient, I wanted everything that I could to do patient comforts in my practice. And I've grown since then. You're get to know my practice a little bit as we go on. I practice in Vancouver Monday through Wednesday with 2 other docs. And then my rest of my week, I'm normally teaching at either Pathway or there's a residency program, or I'm lecturing. And I just love dentistry so much. It keeps me hopping and busy. Implant Pathway is kind of the known feature, but what I love about Pathway, now we're expanding. It's a live patient education program. And so there's a nonprofit affiliated with it. And everything that we teach, whether it's CEREC, implants, surgeries, whatever we do, it's free for the patients. And so it's a good way to kind of get your hands wet and learn either new services or new technologies while giving back at the same time. So that's my other love. I have a fun side hobby of creating dental spoofs, and you'll kind of see that about my team. We are a high technology practice, and any of my team members would tell you that the only thing that is constant in our practice is definitely change. So just so you can get a glimpse of my practice. So I mentioned that there are 3 doctors in my practice. We have a team of 5 hygienists, and even with 3 doctors, I think it makes a little bit worse with our hygiene checks. So these are our hygienists grabbing the doctor out for the exam. They are positive we just sit back there drinking coffee all day and don't actually see patients. So it's always like, are you doing the exam? Okay, I'll go do the exams.
Hey. Hey, oh, banana. Huh? Ba 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 banana. Ba 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 banana. Oh, ba 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 banana.
And I told you I practiced Monday through Wednesday, and I used to just dread my Thursdays and the fact that I was leaving my practice because I was sure my practice was going to be on fire. So I was just a constant texter of everyone in the office, like, is everything okay? Checking in nonstop. And so they created these TikTok Thursdays to let me know how incredibly mature and well-behaved they are when I'm out of town, when mama's out of town. And you can see we like to have fun, but we do take the culture in our practice super seriously because, as we know, dentistry can be really stressful, and it's not fun to come to work when it's stressful. So this is what we do when that comes up.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Today drained me.
That's Dr. Lena throwing out one of our assistants who was given a little tood. No team members were injured during any of our TikToks. If you want to have fun, we try to do TikToks every Thursday. I'm normally not in those ones, but we try to make dentistry as fun as we can. So I mentioned that I did a startup practice, meaning started with absolutely 0 patients and grew today to a pretty good size. I would say an everyday growing practice. And some of the ways that we did that was, for me, I decided to accept PPOs. And so what that means and why I share that is I'm constantly trying to figure out how to get my best ROI for my technology, make things efficient while still giving the highest quality of work to my patients. For me, one of the reasons I decided to accept PPOs is at this time in 2008, 2009, I was a brand new practice trying to gain patients. I do have one competitive advantage that not many people have, and that my last name is Aadland, starting with 2 A's. And so I'm first on every list. And when I started, most people were pulling out of insurance companies because insurance companies were cutting all of the fees. But again, I was naive to this world. I didn't know any better. And so I just wanted to figure out how I could make the technology work and give me the best ROI while still giving that high quality care to our patients. I also did this through creating systems. While I was an associate, I worked in private practice and for a large DSO group. I wanted to learn all of the systems that I could to put them in place because that is what's going to make us efficient, especially if you're adopting technologies into your practice. I also wanted to utilize my team to the absolute fullest. I didn't want my team members just to show up to work because it was work. I wanted to see what their strengths were and how to put them in the correct places so that they have fun every day too. And then I wanted to trust my technology. I was in a high-tech office as an associate, but one of the things I did see is the technology that was adopted and the technology that sat in the corner and became the coat hook. And unfortunately, typically it's the most expensive technology that becomes that coat hook. And I really wanted to know that if I was investing in it, we were going to use it. And then I really truly grew my practice by creating this culture of single visit dentistry. And some of that was just not having a lot of patients at the beginning. And that's how we built up the momentum in our practice. And then it's just kind of stuck, just responding to patients' time, knowing that I think I'm super fun to hang out with, but not all my patients do all the time either. And time is just precious, especially these days. And so how could I minimize that time? And I did it through technology, whether it was adding services, utilizing all of that technology to the fullest. And we're in such an exciting time of dentistry that new technology is popping up all the time. But what's important about it and what's the difference between it? So I'm at my office right now. I was a little confused on some dates. And so I was running over and one of my new team members was like, what are you lecturing on? Why are you running out so fast? Because of course I had a patient going late. I never have patients going late unless I have something to do. Anyways, I'm running out and I was like, oh, I'm going to talk about printing versus milling. And she's like, oh, what's the difference? And I thought, oh, well, perfect. This is exactly why I'm talking about it. Because a lot of people don't know the difference, whether it's patients or new team members or even new doctors coming in. Is there a difference and why do we even care? So 2 of my very favorite technologies. So first, we're just going to step back and we're going to talk about the workflow because the workflow is exactly the same whether you are printing versus milling. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to scan. Now, I've been a CEREC user since 2006, way back in the Red Cam days. It was one of the only scanners at that time that was available, and that just happens to be what I was trained on. But I will tell you, and we'll go through these workflows, that you can use any scanner. The next thing that we do is we need to design. So whether we are doing crowns, whether we are doing night guards, whatever we are making, we're going to scan, and then we need to design it. After that becomes the manufacturing. So this is where we're going to talk about milling versus printing. And then we need to process whatever we're going to manufacture. In the milling world, that's often putting it in an oven, getting whatever we're milling ready to go. In the printing world, that can be washing and curing. And then we're going to deliver whatever it is that we're making in office. So let's talk about scanning. Today is such an amazing time for scanning because it's becoming more and more affordable and efficient, and the scanners just keep getting better and better. So again, when I started back in 2006, there weren't very many scanners on the market. I'm obviously very comfortable with CEREC because I've been using it for that long, but I also have other scanners in my office because for me, my CEREC is made for milling, and it's the most efficient in my practice and the most profitable in my practice when it is milling something. And then I have other scanners, like I have a 3-disc Heron, and I use that scanner for my auxiliary scan. So for scanning for night guards, for surgical guides, for ortho, for scanning for things my assistants are just using it, but it's not actually going to be milled, then that scanner is often being used. We have 3 doctors, we have 2 CERECs, and then our other scan, our 3-disc. And so the scanners are always moving around the office. Now, again, it doesn't matter what scanner you have, but what I would say is you always want to scan with purpose. And why is because every time we get into scanning, it's just fun. It's fun to play the video game, right? And we can see all this information and we want to gather all this data. But you have to know why you're scanning, what's the important data when you are scanning. And you want to be efficient because if you overscan, you can actually make the scans worse. And so for me, depending what I'm scanning, I'm always scanning with a pattern. So if I'm going to scan, whether it's full arch or a quadrant, I'm going to go in, I'm going to start on the occlusal surface, and then I'm going to tip my scanner at a 45-degree angle and either do the buccal or the lingual. And then I'm going to go back and do the opposite. I'm going to try to get as much information as I can in 3 swipes. And then I'm going to go back and capture whatever relevant data there is. So if I'm doing a crown, I'm going to go back to above my prep tooth, and I'm going to make sure I got my adjacent contacts and that my margins are clear. If I'm doing a full arch scan, say for ortho, I'm going to go back into the embrasures, make sure that I captured all that data because that's how the aligners are going to engage. So I want to know why I'm scanning and what the important information is, but I don't want to overscan. Overscanning is one of the biggest things that I see, especially with new users, because it's just so much fun. And again, there are so many scanners on the market today. Like, it's an exciting time for scanners. And as much as I love CEREC and I love my 3-disc, I will tell you all of these scanners are really good. So find one that's comfortable, find one that's easy to use, that you have good support, and just get scanning. Okay, so we talked about scanning, and then we talk about design. So for milling in-house, there's systems like CEREC or like the Plan Mecha system, or you're milling in-house. Normally you take a scan, they have a software that helps you design. So for CEREC, for instance, I scan my crown. The software within CEREC makes designing a crown, super easy. And then I mill my crown from there. Now, if we're printing or if we're scanning for something else, then we have to have some sort of design service. And so design softwares, if you want to stay in-house, like what labs use, or if you bring them into your own practice, you're going to use softwares like exocad, CEREC InLab, or 3Shape. Those are kind of the main ones. Or sometimes you can also, or not even sometimes, you can also partner up with your labs, or there's design services. Like if we're printing, in this case, I'm showing SprintRay as an example, they have their own design service. So someone else is designing outside of the office and then sending that design back to me. So I'm going to scan, and then I have to design, whether I'm designing in office or I'm sending it out to someone else. So we scan, we design, and then we manufacture. And this is where we're going to get into the nitty-gritty between printing and milling and why we care. So I'm going to start with printing. So printing, the difference is you're using a liquid material. So whether it's a resin or a ceramic or all sorts of different plastics, depending on what we're doing, we're using a liquid to print whatever we're going to manufacture. So what that looks like is this.
When you send a 3D model to your printer, the software slices it into hundreds of two-dimensional layers. Your printer sees a print as hundreds or thousands of these image layers that it will print one on top of the other until the model is complete. The chemistry of 3D printing resins means that each printed layer sticks to the build platform, but not to the resin tank. Once a layer is complete, the build platform lifts slightly and then a new layer is drawn atop the previous. This process repeats over and over until eventually the models are completely built.
So what does this mean? It means that when we're processing whatever we're going to make, we're making it through an additive layer, and we're restricted by the size of whatever that platform is on the top. Versus when we're milling, we're typically milling from like a block, and we're doing a subtractive process, meaning that we're milling something away and we're limited by the size of that block. There are lots of printers out there today. I was kind of an early adopter way back when printers came out. And what I can tell you then is that we didn't have the workflows that are out today. Same thing with scanners. The printers that are out today typically have their own ecosystems, own workflows, and it makes it so much easier. When I started printing, I had one assistant that could do the extra software and all the extra steps. And then she left me, she chased a boy off to California, and I was devastated. My other assistants were like, no way, that looks way too hard. So we stopped printing. And then now there's this push in the evolution of printers. SprintRay has been a huge force of that, which is one of the ones in my office. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit more. And in that, they've just made it so easy where it's literally just a click of the button to print. But like scanners, there's no wrong printer out there today. They're all fantastic. People will tell you there's DLP printing, there's SLA printing. You can go down these huge rabbit holes. I would say it's more like, do you like BMW or Mercedes or Audi? Like, you're going to have your favorite one. People will tell you why one's better than the other. For me, it's more of what's going to work in my office. Is it easy to use? Is it an easy workflow? How do I get training on it? It's so important. You can find printers on Amazon that are so cheap, but can you use them in the dental space? Can you get the resins for it? Can you get training on it? Who supports the equipment? If something goes wrong, who do you call? Do you call your Schein, or do you call the direct manufacturer? It's really important how you're going to get help, because all of this is equipment and things will go wrong. That's just nature. Are there monthly fees associated with it? And really, does it make sense for your practice? Those are the important things. So we scan, we design, we manufacture. In this case, we're still talking about printing, and then we process. So early adoption days, this is how we used to process our materials. We had these really fancy Rubbermaids. We threw some alcohol in it. We put it on a vibrating plate. We let it just sit there for however long. And then I used nail cure boxes with this little LED light turntable. I cured it until it wasn't sticky anymore. Super, super high tech. Not at all. And again, like, this was a really messy process. But today there's these full ecosystems. So this is what SprintRay looks like. You have your printer and then your wash and your cure. So those are always going to be our 3 steps. Prime Print has a beautiful system as well. They're just 2 machines because the wash and the cure is in one of them together. Really, all of them have these great systems today that make it so much easier. This is what the SprintRay one looks like. So you lift the lid, there's different resin tanks. The resin is on the bottom. Now we have them really pretty labeled, but it gets printed on the top. That's the platform that she's putting into the wash right now. And I will tell you, the first time we printed, all my assistants were so excited, and they gathered around and they were looking in the resin and they're like, it didn't print, it didn't print. And I was just giggling and I said, look up, because that's where the platform is. So you put it in the wash. Again, you just push a simple button and then you put it in the cure box. All of it is labeled per material because every material is different. So a little bit more science than behind the just leaving it in an alcohol bath. It is per material and different even zones. And these processes also keep getting faster and faster, which has been huge in a practice when you're used to single day dentistry. This is the Prime Print, another beautiful printer that's out there, very easy process. In this case, the resin is in a tank back in that little box where those labels are behind that yellow, it looks like a vase or a pitcher. And then the platform is actually in that pitcher. And so what I like about the Prime Print is it is a very clean process. You literally just take the pitcher from one side to the other and you're not touching any of the resins. And it prints super dry. This is what it looks like when it's printed. So you just take that picture out, you turn it over, that's the platform, and then you're going to break off all the little supports on there. So we scan, we design, we manufacture, and we process, and then we deliver. And what's exciting about the printing world, especially, is that there's so many now options out there of what we can deliver through all the science of materials, all the material science. Let's try that again. But this is where it can kind of get confusing. Like, am I supposed to be printing this? Am I supposed to be milling this? Am I going to go to dental jail if I do the wrong thing? And so these are the things that I'm excited to kind of dive into a little bit more. So we talked about printing, but now let's go ahead and we'll talk about milling for a second. So printing is an additive where we're using that liquid resin and we're adding layers and we're light curing those layers and we're making something. Whereas milling, we're using a block or a puck and we are milling something that we're taking away material to create whatever we want. So our in-house mills, we're typically using these smaller blocks. And so in the upper corner, you can see the blocks for bridges, for implant crowns, for single crowns. On the bottom, we can do our surgical guides with blocks. That round puck is not normally an in-house mill unless you have a pretty big practice, and sometimes you have those bigger 5-axis mills where you can do bigger work like that. In this case, is an Ivotion block where you can mill out a denture. So for in-office, there's 2 types of milling that we use for our day-to-day. There's grinding, which uses water. That's the one on the left. And this is for our glass ceramics. And then there's milling, which is a dry process. And these are for our zirconias. And what's fun about this one is we can now mill crowns in like 3.5 minutes. Typically, they're under 5 minutes for these zirconia crowns. And it is so fun. It's incredible marketing for your patients to go watch and have your crown being made. And I got a tip really early on in my career when I was watching a speaker, and the speaker had mentioned, like, just have your patient push start so that they feel like they're the ones that actually made it. And it lets them just take some ownership to it. And then they complain a little bit less if they have anything to complain about sometimes, but not that patients ever complain, but just a fun tip. And they always love it for social media. But that's the difference between milling and printing. So again, manufacture. So in processing with milling, there's often what we call a sprue of how the restoration is attached to the block. And so we need to do a little bit of shaping. And then normally we're going to put it in an oven. So like for Emax, we're going to crystallize it, meaning we're going to take that purple block and that's what's going to turn it white. For zirconia is milled out about 25% bigger. That has been great because when you mill it out bigger, you can have a little bit more detailed occlusal anatomy and you have a little bit more forgiveness on your preps because it's so much bigger when it mills out, and then it shrinks that about 25%. And that's called sintering. And then deliver. So milling, this is what we've been doing in our practice for so long. We mill our implant crowns. We were milling our surgical guides, our smile design and crown cases. We don't do a ton of removable or the big hybrids, and we don't mill those in-house personally. We send those to a lab, but normally the lab is doing that. So how do we choose? Should we be printing? Should we be milling? Why is this so exciting? Well, I think what's really exciting about it is milling's been around for a long time. I think it's been around for over 38 years, 39 years, somewhere in that. It's a fantastic piece of equipment that we can use in our practice, but it is cost prohibitive to everybody, not to everybody, but to some practices, it's just expensive. And so when printing came along and it made it a little bit more affordable to do some of the same processes or same deliverables to our patients, it was just really exciting. But then obviously we worry about quality and what's going to be the best for our patients. And so let's just kind of deep dive into that. I'm a huge fan of Simon Sinek. I have always been. When I started my practice, I had read this book, Start With Your Why, and I fully believe that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And why this spoke to me is I'm in a town of about 175,000 people. I have 90 dentists in my zip code. There's a dentist on every corner. We live in the gorgeous Pacific Northwest. And I had to stand out, and I needed people to buy my why. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. So what does this matter in dentistry? Why does technology like this get me so excited? Well, one of the reasons is patient comfort. This is a patient who is terrified of the dentist. She'd had one tooth extracted and said it was the biggest nightmare of her life. She hated going to the dentist and getting x-rays because she had that large tori, could never take an impression because she had that large tori. And when we were able to fix up her dentition and just scan for her work, it made a huge difference in building trust. So just the scanning alone and then being able to manufacture when we didn't have to take those impressions with the trays that cut up that tori so easily made a big, big difference in just this one patient's world. But you have so many patients like this. Team comfort. Now, I will tell you, this is not from my office, but you think like if you had a patient walking by this lab and saw this and saw those impression trays, is this the office that you want to spend your money in? We walked in the lab and I was like, oh, the smell from all of that stone. Like, I shouldn't even say team comfort. I should say doctor comfort. Like, I look at this picture and it just gives me so much anxiety. And like stone is a part of the world, but if we can get rid of that and we can keep everything super clean with our scans and then it prints from the resin and never have to worry about this again, that has me sold all day long. And then storage. I know when I built my practice, I had this huge lab that I thought I'd never fill up and I had so much storage. But as you practice for, I'm going on 13, 14 years here, it goes fast and all of a sudden that storage can be eaten up. So now if we can do that as data storage versus lab storage, where you're not searching for cases, again, like they had a full-time person who just pretty much got cases ready, going in, out, looking for cases. Like this can be kind of a mess. Whereas instead you could just hop online into your dashboard, whether this is Sprint Raise dashboard, but same thing, if you save your files on Seric for milling or dashboard here, you can be so much more efficient in your files. And then the other exciting part is the ease and the ROI. And this is where the systems, whether it's milling or printing, just keep getting better, faster, more efficient, more affordable, especially after you purchase the technology. So when do we do what? So I'll tell you, printing versus milling, I'm printing my models now all day long. We don't have stone in our office anymore. We are just printing and we don't even save our models necessarily all the time unless it's a patient that's coming up right away, because we can always just print another one. So storage isn't a problem. Now, why do we use models? We use models for our digital wax ups for communication with our patients. We use models when we're doing suck downs for bleach trays or for ortho trays if we're creating the trays in-house. So we can't print bleach trays quite yet. We can't print ortho trays. At least we don't have the capability in our office. I'm sure it's coming down the pipeline, but those are the reasons that we're using models. Occlusal guards, this isn't something that we mill. This is definitely something that we print. We'll go through that in a minute as well, but especially today with patients just breaking teeth right and left, we print a lot of occlusal guards for our patients, and printing, because it's now so cost effective, we've kind of changed up how we're even presenting that to our patients. And then surgical guides, you can absolutely mill surgical guides. And that is how we were doing our implant surgery before, but now we've switched that over to printing. A lot of times, cost, it is a little bit less, but also because it's less of a mess in our mills. And our mills, again, going back to that ROI, I'm making more money when we're milling the crowns, and we can mill more crowns in that time than we can the surgical guides. So just kind of looking at the workflows in your office, like where are you having any hiccups? If you have one mill versus a printer, if you can have that printer doing something else that the mill can't, then those are some of the efficiencies in your office that you can pay attention to. So occlusal guards, just really quick, this is something that we print, we don't mill. And what's fun about occlusal guards is, talking about occlusion can be talking to like religion, like everyone has their different perfect occlusal guard, if you believe in them or if you don't believe in them, if there's the Michigan splint, the Koisnite guard, occlusal guard with an anterior ramp, and there's so many different design services now. This happens to be Sprint Raise design service, where you have all of the capability to have what you want designed. It doesn't just have to be a flat plane. The other cool part about it is if I have a hygiene patient coming in at the beginning of my appointment and they say, hey, I need a new night guard, we can get them scanned at the beginning of the appointment. Takes less than 4 minutes. We can have that designed. There's AI doing a lot of designs these days, so it just takes a couple minutes, and we can have that processed by the time that patient walks out the door. So not only is it an amazing service for the patient, but it also saves my chair time later, which is huge because every time you're turning over your room or your chair, obviously that's going to add more cost and take away from your schedule. So if you can provide that in one appointment, that's pretty powerful. And you can all do this for about $33. So for the sprint ray services, it's about $30 for the design and $3 for the print. But the cool thing is, I totally stole this from Dr. Tim Anderson, where he decided he was going to have this occlusal guard program. So instead of printing one night guard, he printed multiple, and he would give it to those patients on their recalls, because night guards can get a little gunky over time. Or if it broke, it's again really easy to just reprint. And it's such a great add to the patient when they think, oh, I'm getting 2 for the price of 1. It's just one of those wow factors, and it's not costing you any more money, which is huge. And then you have that file. If something changes, you do have to redesign it. And so there is going to be that design fee. But again, you're keeping that cost so much lower and that wow factor for the patients, especially when we're doing big full porcelain cases today. We're normally just throwing these in because it's protecting the porcelain and it's not adding a lot of cost to us. Surgical guides. We love doing surgical guides for our implant surgeries whenever we can in office. It doesn't happen all the time, but this is kind of our go-to. We have someone else design for us. We can also have the software. We have exocad where we can make it ourselves, but some of that's just a time and comfort thing. It's about $2 to print and about $7 for the metal sleeve that we get from our implant manufacturer. So we use BioHorizons implants, and so we get our sleeves from them. That's what we put in there. And we have these ready to go, our implants pulled, our guides designed before the patient comes in. So this is a pretty efficient process where we have our consult appointment, or even through hygiene, where that patient is getting scanned both in CBCT, which gives us our DICOM file, and through our scanner, which gives us our STL file. So it doesn't matter what scanner, but we need a STL and a DICOM. We're sending that to a design service. They are designing where the implant is going and the guide. We have full control over where that implant is going. And so we can move it if we want it in a different location, always making sure that's ground down. We get the STL file back, and then we choose to print it rather than mill it. Again, some of that is just because we need our mills doing crowns, and it's less of a mess because when you're milling some of those guides, it can get a little messy in the tank. Love having that recipe. So this recipe, when you have the surgical guides, it tells you what stop position you're going to be at, and then the recipe of what drills you're going to use. In this case, especially when I first started, this is a new service that I was adding to our practice. I wanted those easy home run cases, abundant bone. Try in the guide, make sure there's windows in there so that you can see it. You put your drill in. I place the implant through my guide. I do scan at my time. So this is where I use my Sarah, because this is something that I would normally mill. I'm going to scan at the time of surgery, take my digital impression, and then I'm going to suture the patient up. In this case, I ended up putting abutments on there, and patient walks out the door, but then I already have this design feature. So I'm not placing the permanent crown at the time of surgery. The patient's healing up 3-4 months or 6 months, however long they need. I know that my guide worked, and that I'm going to do a screw retained crown because the implant went right where I wanted, but also it's saving the patient an appointment. And so the patient comes in for their 3rd appointment. I put these in. In this case, this patient was wearing a retainer, so her teeth did not shift. Do teeth shift sometimes? Yes, they do. So sometimes I have to adjust the contacts, but still it's saving that chair time and that appointment time for both me and the patient, which is pretty cool. Just technology making it more efficient. So I have been milling implant crowns for the last, I think the implant block has been out for about 8 or 9 years. Been super, super comfortable with this process. I personally do Emax right now. Today, we can do Emax or zirconia, and we can do either screw retained, or we can do a custom abutment and a crown. Now, practicing through the years, I definitely learned my lesson in not respecting how much porcelain versus tie base. And so today I will also do a custom abutment, a big metal abutment, and then mill my own crown on top of that. And it's just a workflow that we use, but I have been milling. But I was a little inspired it was actually a Keep Syracuse meeting that we had a couple months ago, where Dr. Wally Renee, who is definitely one of the forefront in printing these days, brought up this study. And what was so interesting about this is, so I teach at Pathway, an implant pathway, and I teach how to do implant crowns. And we place about 5,000 implants a year. So a lot of implant restorations going through there. And we will get these open contacts. And during a course, I was so OCD about checking those contacts all the time, or even in my private practice, check those contacts. Contacts were great. And then the patient would come back and you would get this open contact and just think, you've got to be kidding. How did this happen? And it's a pain when that happens, because if it's a screw retained crown, then you have to just remake it, or you hope that the tooth next door either needs a crown or a DO filling or an MO filling, whatever that may be. And so when Wally presented this, I was so shocked, but it just made so much sense. So this is straight off of PubMed. This is a review that was done that said in the review, half of the proximal contacts were gone. 50%, over 50% of proximal contacts had opened up in implant crowns when it was an implant crown next to a natural tooth, most frequently with the mesial contact in the mandibular arch. So obviously we all know that teeth do move, but this is such a frustrating process. What can we do about it? And so Dr. Renee really talked about how he is now switching gears and printing his crowns instead, because it's so easy to add to that contact. And because the printed crowns do have resin, you can bill it out as a ceramic crown. It's staying on better. They're bonding a little bit better. And he got super nerdy talking about methacrylate and the free bonds of it. I will tell you that I'm not that nerdy in material science, but he has lots of studies to prove it. He's been doing this for a while. So we've switched gears and started doing this within our practice. We haven't reached into anteriors. We're still milling our anteriors, and that is mostly because I can't make them quite as pretty as I can with porcelain. But this is something that we're checking out to see the longevity. And I do discuss it with my patients. This is newer to me in my practice, and my patients know that I try things all the time, but I will stand behind the work. And so if we've had one contact open up where we literally just unscrewed it and we just bonded some resin on there and put it back in, and it was great. And I thought, man, I don't know why I haven't been doing this for so long. So this is an application where I'm really excited, where I'm shifting not every single crown to printing, but definitely shifting to some of it in certain situations to see how this is. And if it doesn't work in, I don't know, 10, 20 years, then we'll see what happens. I could be eating my words, but I'm excited for, all the dentists that have progressed this forward, and the technology and the new resins that are coming out to make this a possibility. So we talked about implant crowns, and then that kind of leads into crowns, because this is also kind of the rage right now, right? Is printing crowns. And is this something that we should be doing all the time? So we can print a crown now, $15 for design, and which is AI, or $5 to print it. So you're looking at about $20. Now, as a CEREC user, I've been really fighting this because my blocks are anywhere from like $25 to $30. So from a savings point, it hasn't been this huge aha. So why do we print versus mill? So this is what's available in the milling world. So these are the CEREC blocks, but the other mills have similar blocks available, and you'll see these blocks coming out all the time. So when I started in the milling world, we really only had Empress and Vita, these feldspathic porcelains. When I started my career, that's what I used on molars, premolars, anteriors. And then we've shifted gears a little bit. We had Emax come available, and the strength on the Emax was so much stronger and beautiful. I became a lot more confident, especially in my molars or even those heavy bruxers, to use those lithium disilicates. We had these ceramic hybrids come out, and these were the non-fire blocks. So these are going to be a little bit more similar to what we can print today. And then zirconia has been all the rage. And the last that I could find from the lab world was that 79% of the market today is zirconia. Now, when we mill zirconia, we mill it again 25% bigger. And so the anatomy is beautiful because you can mill it a lot more fine, because if it isn't blown up, then we're restricted by the mill, by the burrs that we mill with. So whether it's the inside, the intaglio surface, or it's the outside, we have a little bit of restrictions. But zirconia, because we blow it up 25% bigger, we don't have those restrictions. So if you have any sharp preps or even any ledges that kind of pop up, you can get away with a little bit more with zirconia, which I think is one of the reasons it's becoming more popular, especially with the more translucent ones, is also becoming popular because they're becoming more beautiful. So why do we want to print, especially when we're heading towards this trend of stronger is better? But is stronger better? That's kind of the question. And you think about what the gold standard was when I started practice, that was a PFM. And the bond strength of the PFM between where the porcelain and the metal meet is about 250. So when that porcelain starts to chip off, now that sometimes is a true failure and sometimes not, depending on where it's chipped off or what the patient thinks. That puts us back at that Feldspathic and the Vita Mark II range. And so today, when we're printing, we're still in the same range. What is good enough? Why would we print? Why would we do a non-fire block if we could have 1,000 megapascals of zirconia? Well, one of the things that I've definitely seen in my practice is just the visibility. So if you look at a zirconia crown versus if you look at, say, a printed crown, you can see so much more. And in this day of more medications, more sugary drinks, more, just more decay that we see, especially root caries, aging population. Do we want to be able to see that a little bit faster and a little bit better? Now, the downside to this is when you can see it a little bit better, then they often think that the crowns don't work, right? Like, oh, my last crown lasted 50 years. Well, it didn't really last 50 years. You had decay. We just maybe didn't see it. But now that we can see things, and when it's that resin hybrid, if we can even fix them a little bit easier, whether it's a contact or a margin, these are some reasons why we might want to switch. So older patient, pediatrics, I think there's a lot of applications. Do I think I'm going to print every single crown? No, I'm still going to use my zirconia. I'm still going to use my porcelain. I'm still figuring out when I'm going to do each, but it's just another avenue that we can use in dentistry. So this is a great case. This is a patient who is an elderly patient who got on some new meds and all of a sudden started getting root decay everywhere. So this just happens to be number 14. He did not have a tooth below it. The tooth is already root canaled. The decay doesn't look super bad here on the mesial, but then when we take it off, you can see it's just kind of all junk. So he doesn't have a tooth below, and he doesn't want to spend all the money to replace this crown, especially because he knows he has a bunch of other crowns that are failing at the time, but I can't really patch that, obviously, with all this decay underneath. So what if we look at it a little bit different and maybe not charge as much or put him on a crown program? I would much rather do this at a less cost, knowing that my fee isn't as high or my cost isn't as high when I'm printing. Design is an issue. So I can either have AI design it, meaning that I can send it out to a service. In this case, this is again, SprintRay's AI service where they design it within about 15 minutes. The price is $15, or I can design it in-house. In this case though, I cannot design it with CEREC. So at least if I'm printing on a SprintRay. So I can use my CEREC in lab, but that's a different software than my chairside software. So if I want to design it in-house without a fee, then I'm using a program like exocad. So that's what I ended up using for this. I actually did this all 3 ways and kind of had a race to see what was going to be faster. What I'm showing as the example though is exocad. So somewhat similar if you're familiar with the chairside milling. You draw your margin, you come up with the design, you change everything on your design that you want to change, you move everything around, make sure the occlusion's good. But what's cool about it is the print time on this was 9 minutes. So the print time was 9 minutes, wash time was a minute, cure time about 6 minutes. So I could get this crown processed, manufactured and processed in 16 minutes. This is a different program than some of the other printers because SprintRay's just released this very small platform and small resin tank, which allows that print time to be so fast versus like the Prime Print also has crown resin material, but the platform is bigger and the print time is a lot slower because the platform is bigger and the resin tank is bigger. So that part does matter if you're doing same day services, obviously, but pretty cool that you could get this done in 16 minutes. Now, I'm a little slow on exocad. I'm still not quite as efficient as some of my colleagues. I'm trying so hard to get there. The AI definitely beat me in my design time than me on exocad. And then in comparison to milling, I have to center it, so it's a little bit longer. So we were trying all the crowns in. So you can see the mesial side, like it's a pretty flawless margin. My distal margin was super deep. So we did take the x-ray to make sure it was seated all the way, and it wasn't. So this is not cemented in. This is just an example to show you what this looks like. But if he had a cavity under here, could I detect this sooner? Absolutely. This is what this one looks like. So I only had a B1 resin, which you can paint down. I just wanted to see what the fit was on this and try out some different colors. This is OptiGlaze. So this is a composite, oh my gosh, I'm just blanking on words, characterization kit, which means this is going to be a light cure kit. Versus I also milled one out in zirconia just because I wanted to get the workflows and the timing to see really what was faster workflow wise. So this is the zirconia. It milled in 4 minutes. So typically between 3.5 and 5 minutes. So this one took 4 minutes, sintered for 18, took a minute to polish. So I got this one done in 23 minutes. Now my design on Steric was a little faster because I'm faster at it. I've just been doing it longer. So time wise, really not that much of a difference between the two. Now the bang for your buck when you come to printing crowns is when you're doing multiples, because it's not costing you more resin if you print more. So if you're doing 2 or 3, a quadrant, that's when you're going to get a little bit more bang for your buck in printing if you're not already milling. If you're already milling, then the cost wise isn't going to be quite as different other than just the equipment cost. And in pediatrics, I never want to see a stainless steel crown again in my own practice. I hate stainless steel crowns. I have nightmares about them. And why would I ever use one if I could definitely print crowns, especially when kids are growing and I can be so conservative in my printing because they're additive. I can have very thin margins. I just think for pediatrics, this is a no-brainer. Now, can I do a case like this where a patient comes in and I'm doing full anterior ceramics? No, like I am still milling my crowns. I'm not changing my entire portfolio to only printing. I use the mill. I still think this is a just gorgeous restoration in the anterior, my milled restorations. Now you have talented doctors like Dr. Wally Renee, who can make his printed anteriors gorgeous. But I'm still very, very comfortable with having different solutions, but I can also put different costs to those for my patients. So I can kind of give them a menu of options, and it's still fun for a practice. Dentures, I don't personally do a ton of dentures in my practice, but because I've always just been intimidated by removable, but what's fun about it, so this is actually a tray of dentures from one of my colleagues. He's from a smaller town in Central Oregon. He got a printer because he does so much removable and he wanted them for try-ins. And I love it. Tim Anderson calls these prototypes, like emotional or mock-up prototypes. It just made his denture workflow so much more efficient. So if someone came in already with an existing denture, he could scan it, print it, and then just put the wash in there, send that off, and then he would already have his vertical. It can just minimize so many steps. It has definitely changed this world. So can you print dentures? Yes, there's a couple ways you can do that. You can do that in 2 different types of resin, one with a tooth resin, one with a base resin, or you can print it in a monolithic material, meaning it's all going to be white and then you have to color it, or there is milling. Is printing versus milling better? Milling today tends to be a little bit stronger for the most part. Is that going to change? I'm really excited to see. This one happens to be the Ivotion puck down below, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous denture that's very, very strong, but it's also a lot more expensive. So again, if you have those patients or that patient population that might not be able to afford always the highest lab bill, we just did a denture, complete denture from Ivotion. I think our lab bill was like $650 versus if you can print it a lot cheaper. Like these again are just ways that we can transform our practices to help our patient population and have fun doing it, which is kind of cool. Obviously, hybrids are the big hot thing right now, the all-on X's. We can print these for $3.50 to $5. This is one of the classes, and we were laughing. We lined them all up. You could see who the artist was or wasn't, or maybe that middle person just had periodontal disease, but we were just kind of giggling about it. You do have to get a little artsy in it, but this is another material that, is it as strong as a milled zirconia? No, but is it something that could be a long-term provisional that could get a patient by for a while and maybe split up those costs? Because you think, like, how many patients can really afford a $50,000 treatment plan? So if you could break up those costs a little bit and spread that out, is that something that we could do to service with our patients? Smile design. This is one of my biggest passions and one of my biggest uses that I use a mix of milling and printing in my office. So in this case, a patient comes in and she does not like her front teeth, but she can't decide how many teeth she wants to do. And she's a little nervous because although she hates her front teeth, she's not really sure what it's going to look like. So I can very easily just take a photo. I just take a smile photo. I take a smile and retracted, but I take a photo and then I take a scan. So I need that STL file and I send that off and have it designed, or I can design it in ExoCAD. So in that big lab software, and I have what I call a trial smile, or Dr. Anderson would call a prototype. And it's something that I can literally snap in. Now, in this case, I didn't get super detailed and paint all the composite paint on there to make it pretty. One, because I don't want it for that function. I just want them to see a general idea what it's going to look like, but I also want to do my porcelain and know that that's going to look really pretty. But this is something that the patient could take home and show their best friend or significant other. Or for us, we can print one with 6, 8, 10 of different amounts of teeth so that they can see it in their smile and really determine what's going to look good and what they're after. It's an incredible communication tool. So this is the first one that we did, and it was just really exciting to see her reaction. So you'd saw her teeth before. So we are doing our trial smile. So we have not prepped the teeth yet, but we want you to take a peek at it and see what you think. This is our goal for the day. So go ahead and open your eyes and give me a big smile. Go ahead and look in the mirror.
Oh my God.
So this is our goal by the end of the day. This is what we're going to reach for.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
What do you think?
They're amazing.
And how easy was that? How did we do that when we just snapped them right in?
I don't know how I can't believe it.
So these are just the plastic ones. That's the cool part. And then we're going to do the actual porcelain ones, which you're going to have today. We just want to make sure this is what we're looking for.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yay! Okay, you ready to get started?
Yeah.
Let's do it. So this is now part of my workflow that I do even when I still do my same day smiles in-house. So meaning I print out this prototype, I have them look at it, like, is this our goal? Is this why you're going to sit in my chair all day? And then when they accept it, when they determine how many teeth, if they were kind of wishy-washy about it, then I prep and I mill out my permanent restorations. I print out my models to work on. I'll print out the wax up so that they can look at it too. So it's this mix of printing and milling that we're using in our workflow, and it's made us faster and efficient, and like the communication part has been great. But I've also changed that over to, if I have a patient who really is wishy-washy in a consult and they're not ready to commit to that day, it doesn't cost me much at all to print this off where they can take it home. They can just snap it in, kind of like party teeth. Again, Dr. Anderson calls this a prototype, which I love, an emotional prototype. I think it's the best term ever. And it's amazing what it can show patients, for better or for worse. I've also had patients where I didn't think I could really improve that much on their smile. And so when I did this and said, okay, this is what we're looking at, if I cut down your teeth, and it kind of talked them out of treatment, which sometimes you just have to do that as well. So I have been talking so fast and going over so many things because I'm so excited about this and absolutely love it. How do you adapt this into your own practice? Definitely, you have to get your team involved. You want to talk about scheduling. You want to talk about space. Like if you're going to get into printing or milling, where are you going to actually put it? I would say have it in a space where your patients can see it because it's great marketing, and create your culture around it. Have your hygiene team really talk about it and get excited about it. When they hear the noise of either the mill or the printer, just have that conversation. So it creates the culture and the excitement. It's fantastic marketing. commit to training. There's so many online forums or in-person training. This is all technology and something will go wrong. And I have broke everything. So if you have something go wrong, please contact me. I'm happy to share my woes and see how I can help you fix it. Because I guarantee either myself or my team members have probably got into a pickle before, something of the sort. We're very good at that. And then I would say if you're starting new services or even with the technology, start with some home run cases, and we're all going to have those speed bumps, but just don't give up. I've talked about Dr. Wally Renee and his colleague, who I also love, Dr. Auguste de Olivier. They are part of the MOD Institute. They have an East and a West location. 3D dentist, Dr. Tim Anderson, apparently I cut off his name, so sorry about that, is 3D dentist who's in charge of the printing world. They are incredible educators that are all friends of mine who, if you want to get into the printing side more and more, they're just great resources and super fun to hang out with. We obviously have live patient training. And so we're at thepathway.com where we use printing and milling day in and day out using the technology while also giving back to patients if you're interested. And one of my favorite quotes from Steve Jobs, your work is going to fill a large part of your life. And the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. Dentistry is a tough profession, but if we can have a little fun along the way, take care of patients, take care of ourselves, then we can just make this great. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, please let me know. You can email me. I have a website where I have resources. Shoot me a message on Instagram. I hope I answered some questions versus milling or printing. And if I just created more questions, then I am also here to answer those. Thank you guys so much.
That was so wonderful, Dr. Aadland. Thank you so much for such an incredibly informative presentation this evening. And now we are, thank you. We are open now for the Q&A portion of the webinar. And if you have a question, we'd love for you to type it into the Q&A section so that we could have Dr. Aadland answer it live.
Always the awkward pause.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of wonderful information. I think you did such a great job at answering questions that were naturally arising. You know, you don't have to write the question right now. You could also send it to us via email, and we could also send it to Dr. Aadland. We still have a couple of minutes left. So if we, oh, here we go. Here's one question. Let's see. Okay, this is from Dr. Maria Manatu. Do you know anyone in Michigan utilizing this technology?
There are lots of people using it. I'm trying to think who practices in Michigan specifically. I know Wisconsin. At Michigan. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. If you email me, I will definitely find you some resources. I know some of the professors at Michigan. I just can't come up with a name on the spot apparently. But yes, there's doctors all over the US using this. So both milling and printing.
Very cool. And yes, email is a great way to get in touch with you. A comment from Dr. Emily McCarthy, just followed you on Instagram. Great job. Thank you, Dr. McCarthy.
Oh, thank you.
A question here from Dr. Hannah Wong. What is the ballpark cost to get into printing?
So ballpark is about $15,000 for the printer system. If you don't have a scanner, or if you already have a scanner, if you need to buy a scanner, obviously that scanner cost can vary anywhere from $15,000 to up to $60,000, depending on what you're going to do with the scanner. So you could get in as low as $30,000 today, which is incredible. Milling's a little bit more expensive than you're typically up into the 100, 150 range. And so that's a big difference in the ROI. But I think both of them are great technologies as long as you use it. Oh, did we pause, Shirley?
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, there we go. Another comment from Dr. Chris Pescatori. Great presentation, double exclamation mark. Not sure if you heard that one. I might have been muted, but that came from Dr. Pescatori. Wonderful presentation.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you so much. I
And
appreciate
also
it.
another comment from Dr. Lawrence Lizak. We are planning to get our first scanner and was told to get ITERO, I think that's iTero, as ortho
Yep.
Invisalign and for crowns.
So iTero is a beautiful scanner. It works obviously very, very well with Invisalign, especially if you are an Invisalign provider. I don't know much about how it works with the crowns. I don't think you can design your own crowns and mill in-house, but you could probably, you could use the scanner, design your crown in a different software like exocad, or have a design service do it and then print with the printer if you want to do crowns in-house. But iTero, it's been around for a long time. Great scanner.
Wonderful. Thank you. We have another comment from a Dr. Maria Minoto. You are doing a great service. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you.
Well, that is about all the time we have for this evening, but really, truly wonderful presentation, Dr. Aadland. Thank you so much again. And thank you all for joining us tonight. We did record tonight's webinar and we'll email the recording out sometime in the next week. We would appreciate your feedback via our survey that will pop up on your screen shortly. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Thank you again,
Have
Dr.
a great day.
Aadland.
Thank you.